The day the sky changed was quiet at first. People walked through streets, cars rolled on roads, and children played in open fields without knowing that something unusual was about to happen. Above the blue horizon, small lights appeared. At first, many thought they were airplanes or new satellites, but the lights moved in strange patterns. They were too fast, too sharp in their turns, and too bright to belong to anything humans had built. Soon, news channels across the world began to broadcast the sight. Cameras showed fleets of shining vessels floating high above Earth. They did not fall, nor did they fire, nor did they vanish. They simply remained in place, as though watching. Fear spread quickly, but curiosity was even stronger. For years, people had wondered whether life existed among the stars. Now the answer had arrived right above their heads. The first ship descended slowly into the atmosphere. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, smooth and without marks. There were no visible engines or wings. People gathered in crowds, pointing upward, holding their breath. Soldiers stood ready in some nations, yet no weapon was fired. The ship landed gently in a wide desert plain where no city stood nearby. A strange stillness filled the air. From the ship, figures stepped out. They were tall, with elongated heads and smooth pale skin. Their eyes were large and glowed faintly as if reflecting hidden stars. They moved with calm precision, not as conquerors but as travelers. The world watched them through live broadcasts. Governments sent envoys, scientists hurried to the site, and leaders struggled to agree on how to greet the visitors. The aliens, who later called themselves the Ilari, spoke with a voice that was not spoken through mouths. Instead, it rang in the minds of those near them. Their words were clear and careful. They said they came in peace. They said they had seen humanity rise and wished to meet the new children of the galaxy. This word, children, stirred many hearts. Some were proud to be noticed, others felt insulted. Were humans truly seen as small, as inexperienced, as nothing more than students at the edge of a vast school of stars? The Ilari explained they were part of a great coalition of species. For ages, they had wandered between worlds, seeking to guide young civilizations so they would not destroy themselves. To them, Earth was a world of promise, full of energy and growth. Crowds of humans and aliens faced one another under the desert sun. The first human to step forward was a scientist named Arun. He was chosen because he had studied ancient history and spoke with patience. He greeted the Ilari with steady words. He said humanity welcomed friendship but wished to understand what young truly meant in their eyes. The alien who seemed to be the leader responded with calm thoughts. To them, humans had only just begun their journey. Space travel was new, their science was still small compared to civilizations that had lasted for millions of years. To the Ilari, humanity was like a child taking first steps out of a cradle. Arun listened carefully, but inside he felt a quiet fire. Humanity had fought through endless struggles, storms, and ages of darkness to reach this point. They had built cities from stone, crossed oceans with fragile ships, and touched the moon with courage alone. Could such a story be called young? Could such effort be dismissed as small? Still, the meeting remained peaceful. The Ilari offered gifts of knowledge, simple tools for medicine, clean energy, and safe travel across the solar system. In return, they asked only to study Earth, to learn about humans more deeply. Governments debated but finally agreed, believing that cooperation was safer than resistance. The world entered a new age almost overnight. Schools taught alien science, doctors studied alien healing, and machines once thought impossible became real. Yet beneath the excitement lay a quiet question. Why did the Ilari look at humanity as if they were guiding a younger sibling? Why did they smile with the patience of elders when they looked upon the works of man? For now, humanity accepted their words. For now, they welcomed the guidance. But in the silence of his heart, Arun promised to uncover the truth. Humanity was not a child, not a passing moment in history. There was more hidden in the soil of earth, in the ruins beneath deserts and mountains, in the memory of stories passed down for countless ages. He did not yet know what it was, but he felt it waiting. As the sun set over the desert and the first human night under alien light began, people around the world whispered the same thought. The universe had come to meet them. But perhaps, just perhaps, the universe had forgotten who they truly were. The Ilari did not waste time once their ship settled on Earth. They built tall silver towers in chosen sites around the world, structures that shone in sunlight and glowed softly at night. These towers became their bases for study. From there, they sent out teams of scientists and machines, not to harm, but to observe. The aliens were curious about everything. They walked through cities and villages, recording the ways people lived. They visited libraries, scanned ancient manuscripts, and asked questions about culture, language, and history. To the Ilari, this was the beginning of an official assessment. They wished to measure humanity's progress, its strengths and weaknesses, and decide how ready Earth was to join the wider galactic coalition. Many humans felt honored, believing this was a great chance to prove themselves. Others felt uneasy, as if humanity were being treated like a project or an experiment. Still, the Ilari moved forward with calm confidence. They spoke gently but firmly, always repeating that Earth was young and needed guidance. One of the first subjects the Ilari studied was language. They listened to thousands of tongues spoken across the planet. With their advanced tools, they could translate words in seconds, but what surprised them was not the complexity of language but the poetry inside it. Humans carried stories, songs, and sayings from ancient times that were still remembered. To the aliens, this showed that humanity was creative and emotional, but also that they still clung to their past like children unwilling to let go of toys. Next, they studied human architecture. They flew over cities and examined skyscrapers, bridges, and dams. The Ilari admitted these were clever, but they also noted that many were fragile compared to the massive structures built by older civilizations among the stars. They considered Earth cities impressive for a young race, yet temporary, as if humans were only beginning to understand how to shape their world. The most important part of the assessment, however, was history. The Ilari visited museums and ruins. They walked among pyramids, temples, and ancient cities buried under soil. They spoke to archaeologists and historians, asking endless questions. Humans proudly shared what they knew: the rise of early villages, the growth of kingdoms, the discovery of science, and the long road toward space travel. Yet when the Ilari compared human history to their own records, they shook their heads with gentle smiles. They explained that humanity's written history was short, only a few thousand years. For them, this was like a single heartbeat. Their own civilizations had written records stretching back millions of years. They told humans that they were still at the first chapter of their story. This judgment spread quickly. News broadcasts carried the alien voices. Commentators debated on television and across every screen. Some people accepted the view, believing humanity should be humble and learn. Others felt insulted, angry that their long struggles were dismissed as nothing but a beginning. Arun, the scientist who had first spoken to the Ilari, watched the debates quietly. He noticed something the aliens overlooked. When they studied ruins, they only saw what could be measured: stone blocks, broken tools, faded texts. They did not see the spirit behind them, the courage of people who built without machines, who sailed oceans without maps, who reached for the sky with nothing but vision. Arun wondered if the Ilari could not understand because their own history had become too long, too calm. Perhaps they had forgotten what it meant to struggle, to rise from weakness into strength. Still, the Ilari were not cruel. They shared gifts in return for their studies. They helped clean polluted rivers. They gave devices that cured sickness with beams of light. They taught new methods to grow food without harming the soil. These gifts changed lives quickly, and many people became grateful. The aliens were seen as teachers, maybe even guardians. Yet beneath the surface, questions remained. Why did the Ilari look at humanity as if they were reading a simple book? Why did they believe everything about Earth was new? There were ruins still unexplored, caves yet untouched, and legends still told by elders that spoke of times long before recorded history. Could it be that the story of humans stretched farther back than even they knew? One night, as the desert stars burned above, Arun stood outside the silver alien tower. He spoke with one of the Ilari, a tall figure whose eyes glowed like distant moons. He asked, "Do you ever wonder if we had more in our past than we remember?" The alien tilted its head, calm and certain. "If it were so, we would have found it in your records. Nothing is hidden from us." Arun did not argue, but his heart disagreed. He thought of forgotten ruins half buried in sand, of stories whispered by tribes that spoke of stars and journeys beyond the sky. He thought of patterns carved in stone that seemed to show maps of constellations. He believed something deeper waited beneath the soil, something the Ilari had not yet seen. The assessment continued, and the world adjusted to the new presence of alien judges. Humanity stood in the bright light of a galactic stage, observed and measured like a child in school. But in hidden corners of the earth, the ground still held secrets. Secrets that would one day turn judgment into awe. The Ilari believed they understood Earth after weeks of study. They had scanned cities, collected data from libraries, and spoken with leaders. In their view, the story of humanity was written clearly: a young race, curious and bold, but still at the beginning of the path. Yet fate had prepared a surprise that none of them expected. In a vast desert far from cities, one of the Ilari exploration teams detected unusual signals. Their instruments picked up traces of energy deep beneath the sand, energy unlike anything produced by modern humans. At first, they thought it was a natural phenomenon. But the readings were too precise, too organized. The leader of the team ordered a full excavation. Machines descended from ships, unfolding like silver insects. They drilled into the ground, blowing away layers of dust and stone that had been untouched for ages. Human archaeologists from nearby universities were invited to watch, though many felt nervous. They had studied ruins all their lives, yet the scale of the alien machines made their work look small. After days of careful digging, the ground shook as something immense came into view. A doorway of black stone rose from beneath the earth. It was not rough or broken like most ruins. It stood tall and sharp-edged, as if built yesterday. Strange symbols glowed faintly across its surface, symbols no one could recognize. The Ilari scientists froze in silence. They scanned the stone, expecting to find ordinary minerals. Instead, they discovered a material older than Earth's oldest known structures, harder than steel, and filled with traces of advanced energy design. For the first time since arriving on Earth, the aliens did not look calm. They looked unsettled. Humans gathered around the site, whispering in wonder. Cameras recorded every moment, and soon the whole world watched. The discovery spread across every screen, a hidden doorway buried in the desert, untouched for longer than recorded history. Arun was among the first to enter with the team. As they stepped through the dark doorway, they found themselves in a wide hall beneath the ground. The walls were covered in carvings and patterns. Unlike the broken drawings of caves, these carvings showed precision. They displayed stars, planets, and shapes that looked like ships crossing the sky. The Ilari examined them carefully. Their leader spoke with a low voice, saying the style did not match any known human culture. The carvings were far older than the earliest civilizations on Earth. Some of the star patterns matched constellations as they appeared tens of thousands of years ago. Deeper inside the hall, they discovered long chambers filled with objects. They looked like tools or machines, though none worked anymore. Some were broken, others sealed in crystal containers. Even in silence, they seemed powerful, as if they belonged to hands that had once mastered the stars. The Ilari exchanged uneasy glances. Their instruments confirmed the impossible: the site was older than their oldest archives of human life. According to every record, humans should not have been capable of building such things in that time. To them, it was as if a child had suddenly been found holding the tools of an elder. Arun walked slowly among the artifacts, his hand brushing against the carvings. He felt a strange connection, a weight of memory that stirred inside him, though he could not explain why. Looking at the star maps, he whispered, "This is us. This belongs to us." One of the Ilari answered sharply, "It cannot be. Your species did not exist when these were made." But Arun did not step back. He said quietly, "Perhaps our story is longer than we remember." The discovery shook the world. News spread faster than fire. People who had accepted the Ilari judgment now questioned it. Could humanity truly be young if such ruins existed? Could they be the descendants of something greater, something forgotten? In their councils, the Ilari argued. Some believed the site was proof that another species had lived on Earth before humans, and that humans had simply inherited the planet. Others feared it meant that humanity carried a legacy older than their coalition itself. For the first time, the aliens were unsure. Night fell over the desert, but the site glowed with lights as humans and aliens worked together. Archaeologists translated symbols while alien machines scanned every wall. More chambers were found, each one revealing new wonders: statues of human-like figures, maps of distant galaxies, and fragments of writing that hinted at journeys across the stars. The most shocking discovery came when they uncovered a sealed chamber at the deepest point. Inside was a crystal tablet, still pulsing with faint energy. When touched, it projected an image into the air. The image showed human figures standing beside great starships, looking not upward, but outward, as if they already belonged among the stars. For the first time, silence fell over both humans and Ilari. No one spoke. The image seemed to echo through every mind, asking a question that none could answer: were humans truly young, or had they once been ancient travelers who chose to forget? Arun looked at the glowing image and felt his heart race. He knew the world had changed forever. Humanity was no longer just being studied. Humanity was about to remember. The desert site became the center of the world's attention. Thousands of people traveled to the edge of the excavation, though fences and guards kept them at a distance. Governments sent scholars, linguists, and historians to join the Ilari and their machines. News channels broadcast every discovery live, and the halls of the buried structure glowed with lights day and night. Inside the chambers, the carvings and crystal tablets became the focus of study. The symbols were unlike any known language, Yet patterns began to emerge. They repeated in ways that suggested meaning. Human linguists worked side by side with Ilari interpreters, comparing shapes and sounds. Slowly, they realized the carvings were not random art but records of knowledge. The first translated lines told of people who once called themselves the first guardians of Earth. These words struck every listener with wonder. They spoke of a time before written history, when humans had looked to the stars not with fear but with familiarity. The records describe journeys across space, encounters with other species, and the choice to return home. Arun stood among the group when the first translation was read aloud. His heart raced. He had always believed there was more hidden in the soil of Earth, and now the words confirmed it. He whispered to himself, "We were not only dreamers. We were travelers." The Ilari scientists reacted with unease. Some dismissed the translations as myths carved into stone by early humans who imagined great stories. They argued that young civilizations often created legends to explain their place in the world. But others within the Ilari ranks were not so certain. The precision of the star maps carved into the walls could not be explained by imagination alone. They matched constellations as they appeared long ago, with detail that required advanced instruments. More chambers were opened, revealing artifacts sealed in crystal cases. Among them were metal objects shaped like tools, yet they carried no seams or bolts. They appeared to have been grown rather than built. When scanned, they emitted faint energy signatures similar to the alien devices carried by the Ilari themselves. This evidence was harder to deny. The human archaeologists felt both joy and sorrow. Joy, because the ruins proved that their species had once achieved greatness. Sorrow, because so much knowledge had been lost. They wondered why their ancestors had chosen to hide everything beneath the sand instead of passing it forward. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Arun walked through the hall with a small group of scholars. They studied a series of carvings that seemed to tell a story. At first the images showed human figures standing proudly beside towering starships. Then came images of battles among the stars, though no words described who the enemies were. The final carvings showed humans returning to Earth, laying down their ships, and carving symbols of silence. Arun studied the last panel closely. The figures were shown placing star maps inside sealed chambers and covering them with sand. At the bottom, the words read, "To protect the future, we choose to forget." These words puzzled everyone. What danger had forced an entire civilization to bury its own memory? Why had they chosen to erase their greatness? The questions filled the halls, but no answers came. Meanwhile, the Ilari debated among themselves. Some wanted to close the site, fearing the discovery would change the balance of the galaxy. Others argued that truth could not be hidden. They reminded their leaders that they had come to guide humanity, not to bury its past. For the first time, the aliens' community began to break. Outside the ruins, the world changed quickly. People no longer accepted the idea that they were young. Songs, books, and speeches filled with pride spread across nations. Children painted stars on their walls, believing they belonged among them. Even those who had once felt small under the eyes of the Ilari now stood taller, as if the ruins had awakened something in their hearts. Yet Arun felt a deeper responsibility. He knew the ruins were more than proof of greatness. They were also a warning. The carvings showed battles, choices, and a decision to forget. Somewhere in those silent images lay a reason for the lost memory. If humanity wished to rise again, they needed to understand not only their strength but also their mistakes. Late at night, Arun stood at the entrance of the main chamber, staring at the glowing crystal tablet that showed humans beside starships. He thought of his ancestors, of their courage, and of the silence they had chosen. He spoke softly, though no one was near. "We will remember. We will not hide again." The desert wind carried his words into the night. Behind him, the carvings glowed faintly as if the stones themselves still carried the memory of those who built them. The forgotten heritage of humanity was no longer hidden. It was returning, piece by piece, and the galaxy would never see Earth the same way again. The ruins in the desert had shaken the world. What was once only myth had become solid truth carved into stone and sealed in crystal. Humanity was no longer seen as a beginner on the galactic stage. They were the children of an ancient legacy, heirs to a forgotten age. The discovery spread into every corner of the Earth. Schools rewrote their lessons. Teachers spoke of the first guardians of Earth as more than legends. Children sat wide-eyed as they learned their ancestors might have once crossed the stars. In cities, murals of humans standing beside starships began to appear on walls. Musicians sang of hidden memories, and poets wrote of a heritage that had been sleeping beneath the sand. For the first time in many generations, the people of Earth felt united. Differences of nation and language did not vanish, but they seemed smaller compared to the great truth that bound them together. Humanity was not only moving forward but also reaching back to claim what had been lost. Arun spent his days in the desert site, working alongside both human and alien scholars. He translated symbols late into the night, often falling asleep beside the glowing walls. The more he read, the more he realized that the ruins carried both hope and warning. They spoke of journeys and victories, but also of battles that ended in silence. One passage struck him deeply. It read, "The stars remember us, but we choose to forget, until the time when our children are ready to awaken." Arun repeated those words to himself many times. They suggested that the ancestors had not been destroyed, but had chosen to step back, to hide their knowledge until a later age. The thought filled him with wonder. Could it be that humanity had not been abandoned by history, but protected by it? The Ilari were unsettled by this awakening. They had arrived expecting to guide a young race. Instead, they now faced a people whose roots stretched into the unknown past. Some Ilari still insisted the ruins were the work of another species, left behind for humans to find. Others admitted in private that the carvings looked too human to belong to anyone else. The debate spread among them, creating quiet tension in their ranks. One evening, Arun joined an Ilari scholar named Salar who had grown curious rather than fearful. Together they studied a star map carved on the ceiling of a chamber. Salar admitted that the map showed not only local stars but routes leading far beyond the regions known to the coalition. "If your ancestors truly traveled these paths," Salar said, "then their reach was greater than ours." Arun felt a spark of pride, but he also sensed the weight of responsibility. He asked, "If we were once greater, why did we fall silent? Why did we hide this from ourselves?" Salar had no answer. The silence of the ruins spoke louder than any voice. Beyond the desert, humanity began to act. Groups of scientists and engineers came together with renewed purpose. Space agencies that had once struggled for funding now received endless support. Factories worked day and night to build new ships, inspired by the carvings of old vessels. Young people signed up for programs to study astronomy, engineering, and history, believing they were walking the path of their ancestors. The awakening was not only in science. Spiritual leaders spoke of the ruins as a reminder that humanity had always been more than flesh and stone. They told their followers that the heritage of the stars was a gift, and that it should bring humility as well as pride. The message spread: greatness was not only in power but in the wisdom to use it. Yet not all were calm. Some leaders feared the truth. They worried that knowledge of ancient power would stir ambition and conflict. They argued that humanity should move slowly, careful not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Others believed the opposite, that the ruins were a call to rise quickly and reclaim their place among the stars. The debate grew stronger each day, but the sense of awakening was undeniable. Arun often walked among the workers at the site, listening to their conversations. He heard them speak of dreams where they flew through space as if memory itself was returning. He felt the same stirring in his heart, as if the carvings on the walls were not only history but whispers to the blood of every human alive. One night, as the desert winds howled outside, Arun stood before the glowing crystal tablet again. It still showed the image of humans standing beside starships. He raised his hand to it and spoke quietly, "We are ready. We will not forget again." The words felt heavy in the air, as if the stones themselves listened. Perhaps they did. Perhaps the ancestors who carved them had trusted that their children would one day speak such a promise. The awakening of heritage had begun. Humanity was no longer waiting to be judged by others. They were preparing to rise, not as children of the galaxy, but as the descendants of an eternal lineage. And in the silent halls of the ruins, the past seemed to echo with approval. The discovery of the ruins had begun to change the world, but the Ilari felt the shift most clearly. They had come expecting to guide a young species. Instead, they found humans standing on the threshold of a legacy older than any in their coalition. The calm certainty that had marked their arrival was now shaken by awe and uncertainty. At the desert site, the Ilari held meetings among themselves. Some argued that humans had never truly been young. Their ancestors had possessed knowledge and power beyond imagination. Others warned that awakening such a lineage could be dangerous. Humans were unpredictable, emotional, and driven by pride. The Ilari had expected a race that needed teaching, not one whose blood already carried the spark of ancient mastery. Arun watched these discussions quietly. He felt a strange satisfaction. For weeks, the aliens had measured and judged humanity. Now, their perspective was changing. The humans who had once felt small in the galaxy's eyes now began to feel strength in their hearts. Knowledge of the past was not just history, it was a revelation. Around the world, humans reacted with excitement. Space agencies expanded faster than ever. Cities invested in new technology inspired by the designs found in the ruins. Students studied the ancient carvings as if learning from their ancestors directly. Artists and engineers collaborated to rebuild the starship models depicted in the chambers, combining imagination with recovered designs. Even the Ilari could not deny the results. Their instruments showed rapid progress. Humans were learning quickly, adapting technology that the aliens themselves considered advanced. Every success reminded the aliens that humanity had not been a beginner at all. They had been dormant, waiting for the right time to awaken. In one of the largest gatherings at the desert site, the Ilari leader addressed humans directly. His mind spoke into theirs as it always did. "We arrived thinking you were young," he said. "We judged you by what we saw in the surface of your history. Now, we see something greater. Your past carries wisdom and courage that we did not expect. We will watch and learn alongside you." The words carried humility, and the crowd listened in awe. Humans had been measured by one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy and found to possess a strength that rivaled their own. The statement was not only respect, it was acknowledgement. Meanwhile, humans who had studied the ruins began to make their own discoveries. Arun and his team decoded additional symbols that described the construction of hidden power sources. These devices could manipulate energy in ways the current human world had not yet achieved. As the Ilari observed, humans began experimenting cautiously, careful not to repeat the mistakes of their ancestors. The global perspective of humanity shifted as well. Citizens began to see themselves not as small creatures on a fragile planet, but as part of a lineage capable of great creation and responsibility. Newspapers wrote of the awakening of Earth and the return of ancient knowledge. Scientists were celebrated like heroes, not just for their inventions but for connecting the past to the present. Even politics changed. Nations that had been rivals started collaborating on space exploration programs. Old conflicts felt smaller in the shadow of a common heritage. Leaders spoke openly about the need to prepare for humanity's place among the stars. The message was clear: the galaxy had underestimated Earth, and humans would ensure it would never happen again. Arun often walked at night through the illuminated chambers, watching humans and Ilari work together. He felt pride, but also caution. He understood that awakening such power required responsibility. We must honor the past, he thought. Not to control it, but to guide ourselves carefully. The Ilari, too, began to change. They no longer treated humans as students. They observed, advised, and occasionally warned, but they did so as equals. The attitude of superiority that had marked their arrival was replaced with respect and curiosity. They asked questions about human culture, about ways humans thought and created, and in doing so learned as much as they taught. One night, Arun stood at the entrance of the main chamber. The crystal tablet still glowed, showing images of humans beside great starships. He whispered to the night, "The galaxy will see us differently now. We are not young. We are ready." The wind of the desert carried his words, and in the silence, the stones seemed to agree. Humanity's awakening was complete in more than knowledge. It was a shift in perception both for humans themselves and for the beings who had once seen them as children. The galaxy would no longer look down at Earth. It would watch carefully, knowing that something older, stronger, and wiser had returned. The stage was set. The awakening of humanity had altered the balance, not through conquest, but through remembrance. Humans had begun to reclaim their past, and in doing so, they were preparing to step fully into the galaxy not as novices, but as inheritors of an eternal heritage. The desert site had become a symbol of humanity's rebirth. The once hidden chambers and glowing tablets had revealed the truth: humans were not a young race. They were heirs to an ancient legacy, a lineage that had once crossed the stars and returned to Earth to hide knowledge for future generations. The world could no longer see humans as inexperienced. Arun stood among the teams working in the desert, watching the humans and Ilari collaborate. Machines hummed with energy, mapping star routes and testing designs recovered from the ruins. Students and engineers worked side by side, learning from the carvings and crystal devices. It was as if the past itself was guiding the present. The Ilari no longer acted as judges. They had shifted to partners and allies, amazed at the skill and speed with which humans adapted to ancient knowledge. They studied humans with curiosity, learning from their creativity and determination. The coalition had arrived thinking they would teach humanity, but now they found themselves learning as well. Around the world, the awakening had inspired humanity to unite. Nations that once competed fiercely now shared resources and knowledge openly. Space programs were expanded. New research centers were built to study ancient technology and push human innovation further. People looked up at the stars with pride, knowing that their ancestors had once walked among them and that they were now reclaiming that place. The media called it the return of the first guardians, and the phrase became a motto for the new age. Songs, stories, and artworks celebrated humanity's eternal heritage. Children dreamed not only of the stars but of following the paths their ancestors had once traveled. Humanity had been small in the eyes of the galaxy, but now they were awakening to a presence that demanded respect. Arun and his team discovered a final chamber deep beneath the desert sands. Inside, a massive crystal sphere pulsed with energy. It projected a map of galaxies far beyond the reach of any human starship. Paths connected stars, planets, and unknown worlds, suggesting routes humans had once traveled. Arun placed his hand on the sphere, feeling a connection stronger than any technology could explain. He understood that this knowledge was not just a gift, it was a responsibility. The Ilari watched silently, their glowing eyes reflecting the light of the crystal. One of their leaders, who had first called humans young, now spoke with admiration. "We underestimated you," the alien communicated. "You are not a child of the galaxy. You are an ancient power returning." The words were carried by wind and thought to every human near the site. For the first time, humanity felt fully recognized. The judgment that had weighed on them since the Ilari's arrival had shifted into respect. Humans had reclaimed their past, and with it, the promise of the future. In the following months, humans began to construct ships inspired by the ruins. Designs combined modern engineering with ancient techniques, creating vessels capable of long-distance travel and energy manipulation far beyond anything previously achieved. Engineers worked tirelessly, driven by pride and purpose. Every ship launched reminded humans that they were not merely part of the galaxy, they were shaping it. Arun often reflected on the journey. From the first arrival of the Ilari to the discovery of the hidden chambers, humanity had grown not only in knowledge but in identity. They were no longer uncertain or timid. They were the descendants of stars, inheritors of wisdom, courage, and innovation. The Ilari themselves began to spread the story across the coalition. Other species learned of humans' ancient past. Where once they had dismissed Earth as a small, new world, now they approached with curiosity and caution. Humans were no longer just learners. They were a people with roots deep in the galaxy, and the coalition could not ignore them. One night, as Arun watched the desert glow under the light of stars, he felt a connection to those who had gone before. Their choices, their sacrifices, and their wisdom had been hidden for ages, waiting for the right time. Now, humanity had returned to the stage, not as children, but as a people ready to embrace their full potential. He spoke softly to the night, "We remember. We carry their courage. We will not hide again." The desert wind carried his words, brushing over the carved walls and crystal devices. For the first time, the ruins seemed alive with quiet approval. Humanity's eternal heritage was no longer buried or forgotten. It had awakened in hearts, minds, and actions. Across the planet, humans looked to the skies with new eyes. They knew the galaxy would watch them, but now they were confident. They had inherited a legacy older than memory itself. They were capable of greatness, wisdom, and courage. The stars were no longer distant, they were waiting, and humanity was ready to meet them. In that moment, Earth was no longer a quiet planet in a vast galaxy. It was a beacon, a place where history, courage, and potential converged. Humanity had returned to its place among the stars. The galaxy would never see them the same way again.